Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about web applications, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, should I consider web application as quote-unquote serious software engineering? I would say so. Uh, I'm not really sure what you mean by that, if it's serious or not, because I can usually the areas of software development that are, if we think about sort of what most would call mainstream, like if we're not talking like automation like robotics or something like that or anything like that, we're talking about standard software development, commercial software development. You're usually either working on like increasingly more rare now these days, but a desktop application of some sort, or a mobile application of some sort, or you're working on a web application. These are like, or you can of course work with like custom hardware, or you can do system levels development, and like there are so many different areas, but they're all basically all down to you working on one of the standard operating systems in some fashion, or making an application that interacts with that operating system in some way. And so whether or not that's serious or not usually comes down to sort of who have you been talking with. I mean, if you talk to the most die-hard, I don't know, system levels developers, you should know that you have these different tiers of coolness in many cases for some people, depending on which community you're talking to. And different. This is also good to know, different coolness factors in languages and academics and things like that. And people will give you their own flavor of what's serious and what's not serious, what's a good language, what's a shit language, etc., etc. All I can tell you is that if you look at say job opportunities, or when it comes to doing like any type of software development across the globe, the vast majority of the industry works with web, because the platform web applications is bigger than basically everything else. For most intents and purposes, that doesn't necessarily. I want to make that fully clear. As I've said before, guys, when people ask me Angular versus React, or Java versus C Sharp, or so forth, like which one is bigger, which one is more popular, I can go. You can do that now as well, guys. You can go and check out. You can do a Google search and see the spread. You can do a basic search on your job postings and see which is more popular. But it's important to do it for both the thing that is most popular and the second thing, because people think about, oh, it's only the thing that is biggest that is most important, right? No, that's not how it works. Just because there are more jobs in web doesn't mean that there is nothing else going on. There's tons of stuff going on. It's like having $1 billion versus $900 million or something like that. It's still a vast amount. Even if you're in second place, it's still like a gigantic area. And the web might be the biggest, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing else. And so when we talk about serious web application, serious application development or software development, I would say the web definitely falls into that, because the reality is that these are different skills. It's fairly different skills that you need for each case. So if you do, say, system levels development, or desktop application development, or say mobile, sure, you have, and web, for example, like there are overlaps. Like you have languages, you have syntax, you have editors, and so forth and so forth, and you have all these normal things: variables, constants, loops, arrays, what have you, right? But the ecosystems are fairly different, and the considerations you have to deal with are fairly different. So if you do, say, embedded systems, you have certain restrictions. If you do mobile, you have certain restrictions or certain things that you need to consider, because the platform that you are working on is different. Web is the same thing. The web or the browser is a platform, and working with web applications is a platform which requires vast amounts of people to do right. They are very. I would go as, I think, as we can all sort of align on that. For a big website, if we're talking about like say one of your favorite main, like say Google's or Facebook, or like one of Amazon or whatever, like that website, like the size of that system is enormous. We're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people working on like the entire ecosystem of services that are necessary in order to make that entire website work. That system is gigantic. It's very difficult for you to get the same sort of, I mean, if you have, like, you take your favorite online game, for example, you might have a very similar sort of setup. Like what you see is just the UI, but their backend system that connects with servers and all that stuff, that's also web, guys. It's like the backend systems that you connect to is most likely a gigantic ecosystem as well. Just as your Netflix application that you might have on your phone or on your TV or something like that, like that's the client part, which is definitely a very sophisticated system, but the backend is usually done with web. And so this is definitely something you should consider as very serious. And I would say that if you're looking to sort of get a sensation of what mainstream, like what most of the industry is working on, this is the area to look at. This is the thing that's probably most common, as I said, within the workspace. And so if you want to go into this, usually there are a few paths that you can take. You can be a front-end developer and focus mostly on the UI, like the thing that you see in the browser, or you can look at backend development, which is, as I said, like a backend developer is usually someone who you create APIs or different services that the different client systems can connect to. That's something that is true for both for all the other things. Usually, if there's any network work going on with a client system, such as a desktop application, a web page, or a mobile phone or something like that, and it connects to some business server or something that the company owns, either on an on-prem solution or a cloud solution or something like that, you are dealing with some type of network-based backend, and that's what the backend developers do. So in a sense, they're a little bit more flexible than, say, for the people who are working on the client part of the systems. But it's fundamentally just different roles and different language choices, usually, and different stacks that you're dealing with. Or you can do full stack development work, sort of the thing that I do, which is basically you do both. It doesn't really matter to you. And you can do operations, for example, where you have to manage infrastructure, such as all the different resources that you need in order to do work. There's tons of these flavors of roles that are more advanced, like site reliability engineering, you can help out with DevOps, you can be a security expert. Like there's tons and tons and tons of different things that you can be doing within a web application project. But these, I think, are the most common ones, the things I've touched on for software engineering. And I can promise you this much, guys. It's definitely serious software development work, and it's going to take you years and years and years to just get good at one thing when it comes to the web space, because that's how big the web space is. And by the time you get to be like a fairly experienced profile, you're going to have you're going to adopt a fairly diverse skill set. And if your ambition is to sort of get to higher levels where you do like manage things and so forth, I can promise you there's quite a lot of overlap between the complexity of what you need to know and like the requirements on you are going to be fairly high, just as it is if you were to do, say, mobile or like embedded systems or desktop application development and so forth. It really just comes down to like how big is the product that you're dealing with. That's usually the most determining factor if things are quote-unquote serious or not. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, web application development is definitely serious software engineering. It's just a different set of it's a different set of tools, and you have differences. So just because you do web doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to immediately know how to do embedded, and embedded will not just know how to do web, because it's different things. Like the coding, like the languages, and like the core concept that most programming languages have that overlap, they are going to stay the same, but all the tooling, the considerations, what you need to think about and so forth will differ. So you can't, it's just different ways of doing things for different sorts of platforms. But I can promise you it's a very serious career, and most of the companies around the globe have a web presence, or it's like a web-oriented system that they're dealing with. So it's usually the biggest game in town if you're looking for job opportunities. And when it comes to career development, it's this one of the most surefire ways for you to climb up the ladder, because as I said, practically every single company has a web presence of some sort to varying degrees. It's not every, not every company has a mobile app or a some type of specialized hardware or like desktop applications and so forth, but practically every system that does e-commerce of some sort, or every company that does e-commerce of some sort, has a web presence. So it's definitely a very serious area, and it's probably the biggest one that you can consider if you want to get into software development. Uh, I would say that usually you go into front-end development, back-end development, or full-stack development, or something similar. There are many roles apart from that. These are the main ones, and all of them are going to. It's going to present a very long career for you. It's going to be a lot of fun if you like software development, and I'm not going to say that you should get into it or you shouldn't get into it, but if you're afraid that you're not going to learn real coding, I promise you, you don't have to worry about that. So, web development is a very, very serious endeavor, and it's probably, if you want to master it, going to be at least as serious or challenging as anything else you can imagine. Have a great day.